Good evening, everybody. Namaskar. Professor Mani welcoming you on behalf of the Bombay Management Association. As the festival season continues in India, I hope there is more joy and cheer in everybody's home. And today's session, perhaps, is a good example of an organization which, right through its existence, has spread joy and cheer in every home. I'm sure you will remember Amar Chitra Katha, which maybe 45 years ago I started reading as a child. And when I look at some of my senior colleagues here, the past presidents who are in this room, I'm sure besides reading it, they are also now reading it to their grandchildren. Such is the legacy of what Amarchitra Katha as an entity is. Over a period of time, we all started enjoying Tinkle comics as we migrated into the world of Supandi, Kalia the Crow, and so many such fascinating characters. Today we have with us the President and Chief Executive Officer of the entire group of Amar Chitra Katha and Tinkle, Preeti Vyas. Welcome, Preeti ji, on behalf of the Bombay Management Association. It's a delight to have you here with us. We almost feel like we are going to be listening to some stories from you instead of reading the comics that you always made for us over all these years. To introduce Preeti, over her illustrious career of about 2.5 decades, she has been into writing, printing, publishing, editing, and ensuring that those wonderful stories that she and her team creates reaches every part of India and across the world. Of course, digital format is something Amar Chitra Katha and Tinkle adapted to much earlier, and therefore the spread has been across the world. A lot of people are not familiar with the direct connect of this group to yet another publication which so many of us adults swear by. And I'm talking about the National Geographic. Everybody in this room, I'm sure, is an avid fan of Nat Geo in any form that it is. And I must tell you that this was indeed a revolution, that this is part of the same group that makes Amarchitra Katha, Tinkle, and National Geographic. So, such is the stature of the person we have here this evening. Once again, we welcome you, Preeti ji, on behalf of all our past presidents who are here, my colleagues on the executive committee, and so many people who are eager to listen to the Amar Chitra Katha and Tinkle story. May I hand over to you, Preeti, to begin the session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Mani. It's really an honor and a joy to be here. Lovely to meet you as well, Mr. Mhatre. Such an honor to meet such industry stalwarts. And thank you for that really warm and generous introduction. Now I really feel the pressure of making sure my talk is as captivating and interesting as the comic books that we all love to read. Uh, the way I thought I would structure this talk is I would start by sharing a little bit about myself and my journey into publishing and books and how where I am today, and then take you through Amarchitra Katha and the company. And I'm sure that everybody over here already knows what about our past and what we do, but still there might be some who might not be aware. So a little bit about who we are, where we come from, the past. Present where we are and how we look at the future. So a little bit of kal aaj or kal sort of uh, trajectory of our beloved brands. So first, a little bit about myself. I'm Preeti Vyas. I grew up in Mumbai. So I'm a Mumbai girl in and through and through. I'm actually a science graduate from St. Xavier's College, after which I did my post graduation in retail management in Australia. And through the last 25 years, I have worked in a variety of organizations, including Toys R Us in Australia, Sony Music in India, Crossword bookstores, Globus stores. For a brief period, I ran my own children's bookstore as an entrepreneur when I was 26. I ran that for 3 years. I was also then with the Future Group for 5 years, where I started the retail, the books and books, music, stationery retail of the Future Group. We were across over 100 stores with a really good 65, 70 crore turnover in 5 years. I then once again went back to being an entrepreneur. So in 2011, I started my own publishing company called Fun OK Please. Fanoke Please published contemporary Indian content for children between the age groups of 3 to 12 years. We published about 55 to 60 books, did a lot of work for schools, and did some very prestigious co-publishing projects with bigger publishers like HarperCollins, Penguin, Scholastic. With all of them, we did co-published projects. I'm also an author, so my children's book called The Adventures of Vodka, Chimney, which is the adventures of a little Mumbai sparrow, a little chimney who loves to travel across places of natural beauty in India. That was published last in 2018 by Penguin India. I have also edited multiple books. So when it comes to books, I think I have seen, you know, a whole 360 degrees of it. There is no aspect of a book which I have not touched, whether it is writing or editing, marketing, selling, buying, publishing, all of those. After long years of struggle, my company was finally profitable and doing very well in 2019. 8 years actually, when the opportunity to lead Amarchitra Katha came along. It was as an entrepreneur, a difficult decision, because what do you do after working very, very hard and blood, sweat, and tears? You finally have a business which is finally making money and it's profitable and it's winning awards and all that. On the other hand, you have an opportunity to lead one of the most respected brands, one of the oldest companies in Indian publishing. Fortunately for me, the stars were all aligned in the right place, and you know, the promoters of the company were very keen on having me on board, and they agreed to allow me to retain ownership of my company and allowed me to license my content to Amar Chitra Katha. So while I still retain ownership of my own company, all that content is also now published and distributed exclusively by Amarchitra Katha, which is, I think, really, really miraculous and a wonderful, you know, best of both worlds that worked out for me. So I have been leading the company. I joined as president and COO last year in August 2019, and exactly 11 of the company. Um, Perhaps the first promotion in the history of promotions where you give yourself a salary cut when you get your promotion. So because of COVID-19 and, you know, the kind of challenges that businesses have faced, that's the kind of environment in which I started the new position. But it has been absolutely wonderful the way our company has adapted to the times, to the digital. It's been a big stride forward for us in the digital age. And I'm going to take you through a short presentation now, which will tell you about what all we do, because a lot of it you might not be aware of. And I have actually kept a few slides at the end specifically on our response to COVID-19 and how we stood up, because that's something which is so topical, and I'm sure everyone is very interested in hearing that story. That story is also something I'm very proud about, because thanks to that, you know, we have become a profitable company this year, and it's been a turnaround for us. So yeah, let's get into it. I'm going to try. I personally don't like attending sessions where there is a long monologue from some speaker, no matter how interesting they might be. So I'm going to try to keep my talk as short and hopefully interesting as possible, and we'll leave more time for question and answers. So I'm just going to share my slideshow.
Perfect.
Yeah. Okay.
All set. Yes.
Yes. So for over 50 years, Amarchitra Katha, through its iconic comic books and its magazine Tinkle, has been the custodian of the nation's stories. I think it's rare to find an Indian adult who has not grown up reading a comic book published by us. And I speak for myself and for many of my friends and colleagues that a large portion of our knowledge of Indian history and mythology came not from our school history lessons, which were uh, often painfully boring, but through Amarchitra Katha. Uh, Recently, I met a lady who said that, you know, she walked into an exam thinking she was attending, she was going to attempt a science paper, when it turned out to be the history paper. Luckily, she had been reading Amar Chitra Katha comics over the weekend, and she had just read Gandhi and Lokmanya Tilak, and she was able to answer those questions in the paper because of the comics, and she managed to pass. So everybody has a story about how Amar Chitra Katha saved the day for them sometime, or how they stored comics under their bed, or how they spent 1 rupee or 10 rupees to go and buy the comics. I think all of us have a very, very special place for Amarchitra Katha in our hearts. And the good news is that it continues. So we have now a new generation of readers, of young children reading these comics. The three brands that we manage are Amarchitra Katha, of course, Tinkle Comics, and as Professor Mani said, National Geographic, where we have two sub-brands. We have the National Geographic magazine, which is the content that comes from the US, and we simply reprint it over here and distribute and market it. The National Geographic Traveler India is a travel magazine which is published by us. So we actually create the content from scratch every month. We have an editorial team specially for this magazine. This is not a new acquisition for us. National Geographic has been renewing the license year upon year with us. So this is our 9th year as a licensee for, we are the first licensees for National Geographic for the magazine in India, and we continue to be. So it's been 9 years running, and a very good relationship with the parent body in the US. So as you know, Amarchitra Katha was founded by a gentleman called Mr. Anant Pai, lovingly known as Uncle Pai, in 1967. Though he founded the company, he was not the owner of the company. The company was it was called India Book House, which put out the comics, and Uncle Pai was a founding editor. Right. Since then, we have created more than 400 comics, and Tinkle is now in its 40th year. The first issue of Tinkle was released in 1980. I still remember the first issue. I was 6 years old at the time, and I remember reading it and being very excited by it. So yes, it's almost 54 years now since the company has been doing this. Amarchitra Katha, 400 comics, 20 plus languages, and we have sold over 100 million copies to date. We are of course the biggest comic book company group in India. We sell online through our own store, through marketplaces, through Kindle, and also through booksellers, magazine vendors, grocery stores. We also have our own apps. The three brands. So Amarchitra Katha has comics in three different. We have the epics and mythology. We have fables and humor. The Bravehearts, the Visionaries, the Indian classics, and the contemporary classics. Typically, children start in India, they start reading at the age of 5. They read simple 2-3 letter words, starting off with single sentence books. And by the time the child is 8 to 14 is when the comic book starts making an appearance in the child's life. So that's the place where we come in. And comic books are beautiful because in a short 32 pages, you will be able to read the entire life of a person, or the entire story of a war, which otherwise you would never want to read perhaps in a 200-300 page book. So that is, and the beautiful visuals, the colorful, the colors, so in a comic book, the iconic art is 80% of the experience is the art, right? The words are 20% of the experience, and Amarchitra Katha prides itself on that iconic art with amazing artists like Ram Vairkar and Pratap Malik, who illustrated the early comics. So this is the 5 categories, like I mentioned. Our core value is that we provide a root to your roots. That is what Amarchitra Katha stands for. It's an authentic, it's sacred, it's revered. Tinkle, as I mentioned, is 40 years old, and it's we like to think of as a child's best friend. It's a friend whom you will learn things from. It's a safe space, safe and clean entertainment where learning meets fun. You'll recognize some of these characters: Supandi, Shambhu, Tantri, and then we have our newer characters, like we have Wingstar, who's a superhero from the Northeast. We have a series of characters called Noise, which is Nilgiri Orchid International School. It's a boarding school series. We have the defective detective. So we have a bunch of new characters, which perhaps some of us from the older generation might not be familiar with them because we haven't read them. But this is what today's kids are reading. And I think that's something I'm actually very proud of, that in 1980, as a 6-year-old, what I was reading, that same Tinkle magazine. I have a son and he's 11 and he's reading the same Tinkle magazine. So we've been able to adapt to the modern times. We've been adapt to today's reader. We are not living only on what was created in the past. there have been some changes as well. So Supandi in the comics in the 80s, Supandi was a servant, right? He used to have these misadventures as a servant. So in 2021, we do not use the word servant at all. He is not a servant. He is an employee at various different places. So he's been a chef, he's been a teacher, he's been a bus driver, he's been a porter. He does all kinds of jobs. Sometimes blue collared, sometimes white collared. So he's had you can say a promotion of sorts. Shambhu, Shikari Shambhu, as all of you might know him, we've dropped the word Shikari. He's only Shambhu now because he's not a Shikari anymore. He's actually now a conservationist, right? So he still shoots animals, but he shoots them with his camera, not with a gun. You won't see him. The only gun he might use is a tranquilizer gun, right? So he, in fact, now works with Shambhu works with the wildlife authorities of India to catch poachers and to catch hunters. And the rest of it remains the same. He's still very cowardly. He's still bumbling around, and he still ends up being the hero somehow, right? So that story arc remains unchanged, but his personality has undergone a change. Tantri actually did become the king last year. I don't know if you're aware, that did happen. That arc ended, and then he discovered it wasn't easy being king, and he went back to being the mantri. So these are some of the changes that have happened in the Tinkle universe. National Geographic, as I mentioned, NGTI and NGT are the two magazines that we publish. For today's talk, since Professor Mani asked me to speak about Indian culture and values, I'm not going to speak about National Geographic because that's another topic for a 1 hour discussion or a 1 hour, and I would love to come back and talk more about what we're doing with this. But today I'm going to focus on ACK and Tinkle. Yeah. So this is how we are structured. We have retail, we have e-commerce, we have our apps and e-content, we have a licensing division, we have an ACK Learn. On the print business, we do a lot of special books as well. We supply to large bookstores and we create special books. We also have some movie tie-ups that happened. Like last year, we did a special tie-up for the movie Tanaji with Ajay Devgan. So a special edition was created only for them. The inside pages remain the same. It was just the cover which was changed, and it worked out really well. They bought about 40,000 copies from us. So it was a good business deal as well, along with giving the comic itself a fresh lease of life. It sold very well thanks to the movie. There is actually a growing interest, a resurgence of love and pride in our own past, right? Which is what we are seeing across all media, and that's something that's really coming back to bringing people back to Amarchitra Katha as well. So in a sense, our mission today is twofold. If I were to say what is our mission in 2021, our mission is to, our founder, Mr. Anant Pai, was a genius. That's the only way to describe him, because for one human being in one lifespan to create this kind of impact, it is very, very rare. It happens to 1 in a million in every generation. There could be a handful of people who have that kind of impact on society. And he was one of those absolute genius founders who had a brilliant creative mind, who was also a marketing genius. So he created this fabulous body of work, which is almost 450 comics of Amarchitra Katha and 40 and a fortnightly of Tinkle over 25, 30 years. So you can imagine the number of. So our mission is twofold. One is that the legacy that he has left us with, this khazana of content, to preserve that, to ensure it does not die out, to ensure it is still read by today's generation of children. So that's one part of the mission. The second part of our mission is to take that legacy forward. Because what are we doing as a team if we are only going to live off the laurels of the past, right? So is to take that legacy forward by telling more stories, publishing new books. So telling new stories, telling more stories, telling different types of stories, and also telling the same stories differently, right? All of this is our mission, to push Amarchitra Katha forward into a new era, that what was being read, we do not want Amarchitra Katha or Tinkle to be nostalgia brands. I actually don't want people of my age group to read it. I mean, I'm happy if they do, it's an added bonus, but my mission or my target is not adults, it is children. We are a children's publishing company, and that's something that we never lose focus on. Because if we end up becoming a nostalgia brand, then it's going to die out in the next 20 years. So it's important that every generation of children connects with Amar Chitra Katha and Tinkle the way that we connected, and that will ensure the 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 lifelong sustenance of both the brands. So I hope that just like I read it, my son is reading, and my grandchildren should also be reading it, which means that we need to adapt ourselves to today's children, the way they are thinking, the world they're growing up in, the art they're consuming, right? They're growing up on Disney Avengers and Frozen. I cannot give them an art style of the 60s and 70s and expect that they should be excited by it. We have to be able to adapt to their tastes, to their interests. So this is the twofold mission: to keep the legacy safe, protect that legacy, and then to push it forward. So moving back to my presentation, the apps and e-content. So we have an app each for Amarchitra Katha Tinkle and National Geographic. And we also sell our content on various other platforms like Kindle and Maxter and third-party other platforms. It's a very vibrant apps. It's taken us a lot of effort to build up this level. And the good thing is that almost 25 to 30% of the users on our apps are international. They're out of India, which means that we are truly a global company. It is not just Indian people in India who are reading, but the great Indian diaspora all over the world who wants to retain that connect to their, like I said, a root to your roots. So it's like a digital route to your roots. Yeah, this is some of the other places where you will find our content. We are on Alexa in India. If you buy an Alexa device, you will find our logo on the packaging. You can play an ACK quiz on Alexa. You can listen to Supandi jokes on Alexa. You can go to Spotify and hear our podcasts. You can go to, of course, Kindle and Maxter and Getlit and read our books. There's a couple of AV which is up on, there's lots of content on YouTube, on Amazon Prime, on Hotstar. So we are trying our best to straddle all the digital platforms. As I always tell my team, a line I don't get tired of saying, that we are storytellers, right? We are not publishers of, we don't run a printing company. We run a content company. We are storytellers, and we are agnostic to the medium. So whichever way you choose to read a book or to listen to my story, my job is to make it available to you. If you want to read it, you can read the comic. If you want to read on the device, it should be possible. You can listen to it, you can watch it, right? And maybe 20 years from now, if there's a way to stream it from my server to your brain directly, I will also do that, right? Whatever is the technology available, the latest technology available to take content, that technology or the medium is just that. It's just a channel. We are not married to any particular channel. So if print books actually just die out, it doesn't mean the company or the Amarchitra Katha will die out, right? So that's something that we feel very proud about. ACK Learn is our online learning platform. It's where we conduct different workshops, including storytelling, folk art, learning to illustrate, learning to write stories, creative writing, and we also do batches on international time zones. So it's not just Indian kids in India, but we also do batches for on US and Europe timings. Yeah, so licensing, we license our characters out on merchandise like t-shirts and mugs and those kind of things. We have our own, we have a wonderful ACK family quiz. I'll talk about that a bit later. Coming to a little bit of social impact, our readers' loyalty and trust have enabled us to partner with various public and private institutions to publish path-breaking content that has had significant impact in young minds and society. So some of the projects I want to highlight, because these are sometimes you might not be aware of them, or they're not in the public domain for sale, but they are being used in various. So this was done with the Ministry of Road Transport and Uber, two comics, one on drinking and driving and one on road safety. We did a fabulous comic on Swachh Bharat. This has been translated into multiple languages, and it has been printed more than 1 lakh times. We've done Professor Ayushman for the Ministry of Ayush. We've done something for the Indian Embassy in Indonesia to talk about the links between the two countries. We did Bharat Ke Veer, which is the Central Armed Police Forces. Their story. We've done things like this, on feminine hygiene and trying to educate little girls about this. We've tied up with a lot of different, again, very socially active movies or socially active causes uh, to create impact. We run something called the Kala Gurukul program, which is run through schools, also run online, where we teach 64 kalas, which are skills, which were taken from the inspiration of Krishna and Balram and adapted to today's age. This is done both online as well as offline. And we support a number of NGOs and trusts in different ways, whether we give complimentary copies, or we give them access, or we give them deep discounts, or we raise funds for them as well at times. Yeah. I think as a nation's favorite storytellers, we have one of the things is that we publish in multiple languages. So of course, all the Indian languages, but also our books have been gone into French, Spanish, Mandarin, Portuguese, Swahili. They continue to go in multiple languages and be exported around the world. Powering the education sector. So our content has been included. This is something that Uncle Pai he worked so hard to convince educationists that comic books were not frivolous. In fact, children would retain knowledge a lot better if they learned through the comic book medium. And finally, it is happening. There are textbook publishers like Madhuban or TES Orbit, where our comic actually comes as a part of a textbook. So for example, if you are learning about Maharana Pratap, then the ACK comic is printed as part of your textbook. And that's something that kids are really appreciating. So now coming to our COVID-19 impact. So this is all the stuff we were doing before COVID. Now let's see what happened in the month of March. In the month of March, I can tell you the specific date, 16th March 2020. Offices, we received the notification that offices had to be closed. Schools had been closed. I was driving home thinking, okay, I'm going to get a good 1 week time at home to spend with my son and catch up on all the writing projects that were overdue. I was pretty sure, like I think most of us were, that 8-10 दिन में we'll be back, right? Like we didn't expect this to go on for more than 10 days. At that time, the head of digital in my company, he's a really dynamic young man. His name is Dipesh Kothari, and he called up and said, Preeti, we have our 2 apps. We have an ACK app and a Tinkle app. We have all our comics. So I think there's going to be a surge in the readership because people are going to be stuck at home. So why don't we use this time and do something? At the same time, there was a lot of talk that maybe we should create a comic on coronavirus and how you should beat, how you can beat the virus. But we decided to not do that because we aren't medical practitioners or we aren't a pharma company. We have no health credentials to put out that content. So we said, let's just do what we know how to do, which is tell stories and entertain children. So just as our offering or as our gift, let's give children 30-day access to our apps. Let them just read, read as much as you want for 30 days. We won't take a single rupee from you. Now, at that point of time, and listen to the numbers, at that point of time, we had about 78,000 users on our 2 apps put together. Dipesh and me thought कि वो 78,000 का 1 lakh हो जाएगा, so it will be something good, right? We'll attract some new users and we'll be giving a gift to the children. Little did we know what lay in store, because that campaign went absolutely viral. It went around the world quickly. Within 48 hours, the links were coming back to me saying, is this sure? Are you actually doing this? Is this a fake forward? Is this true? Within a span of 15 days, we had gone from 78,000 signups over the last 4 years on our apps. In 15 days, we went from 78,000 to 3.5 lakhs. So it was that kind of huge jump. And over the months to come, we saw a record 1.2 million new users signing up. So we are now currently sitting at 12 lakh users from across the world. On Amar Chitra Katha, 30% of them are from outside India. On Tinkle, 20% of them are from outside India. The conversion percentages have also been very healthy. So I'm seeing that we are having about 3.5 to 4 lakh of them being paid users, which is a miracle, right? Because we all know in the content space that Indian customers don't like to pay for content. They want content free, but they are ready to pay for our content. And we are seeing that the reading time, the metrics are very strong. We're seeing 17, 18, 19 minutes kind of reading average on the app, which is amazing. Because if it means you're spending 18 minutes on the app, that means you're reading one full comic cover to cover, right? That's the amount of time it takes. So that's wonderful. And it's just given us a completely new, uh, I can say it's a new birth. It's like a rebirth for the company, a digital rebirth, and we've become a truly global company. And with due credit to my team, the whole team has been able to hold on to the customer. See, it's easy to do a viral campaign and get that customer base, but how do you hold on to them? How do you keep them engaged? And that's what our team has done a phenomenal job of. So that was the big lockdown story. We expected to see a 10% surge, and we ended up getting a 300% surge. So that's what life is about, right? It's unpredictable. And if you do a projection on an Excel sheet, you can never predict these things, but they happen. These kind of growth surges do happen. Yes, so we've seen these kind of growth. This is actually a little dated presentation. So this is adding up to about 8 lakhs, but currently we are at 12. Um, yes. So almost 100 million pages have been read in just the last 3 months alone. And that's continuing to grow. We launched a whole bunch of new titles during the lockdown. This was something we launched in October, The Naval Journey of India. It's something we've done. It's a series of 3 books in association with the Indian Navy that talks about India's maritime heritage. A beautiful project, and it's been received really, really well as well. Uh, Official launch happened on Navy Day, which is on the 4th of December. We have a lovely trailer and got some great media coverage as well. We launched Tinkle Holiday Special. We launched a Tinkle Gold. So Tinkle, we stopped printing for 6 months because of COVID. We've just gone back into print, but Tinkle Gold is something, it was our 40th birthday, and we put together the best content from the app and made a special print edition of it. NTPC, some of the special books that we put out, which are special editions from our existing books put out for Kindle. Yeah, some of these. And this title, which is the Mahadev, it's actually the Shiv Puran told in 5 parts. And first time ever, it was a completely digital only launch. We've not launched it on print as well. We will print it eventually, but as of now, it's still digital. And I just got the statistics this morning that this title has been read a record. It's a record for us as well, 1.6 lakh times just in the last 2.5 months. And it's very interesting to see how people are adapting, like how adaptable human beings are, right? How quickly we adapt to change. So I get how parents are using the app. So we got an email from a parent. She says that they're using the screen mirroring function on the smartphone to project or to cast the Amarchitra Katha app on the TV screen. So during the lockdown, the entire family made a post-lunch ritual that every day after lunch, the whole family would sit together and read one Amarchitra Katha comic on their TV screen. And that is beautiful, right? That's a beautiful next step of our evolution of how content can be consumed, how stories can be read. And the lockdown made it possible. Because before the lockdown, किसी ने सोचा नहीं कि ऐसे भी पढ़ सकते हैं. Nobody thought about it. It wasn't really a need. But that necessity of being stuck at home made people start innovating. And luckily, we were there to provide an offering. Finally, now we are back in print after 9 months. We have just released the National Geographic, and this is Tinkle's new edition released this month. It's a New Year's edition, first time back in print, and also on the app, of course. So I just mentioned about Mahadev to you. We also did Vikram Sarabhai, a story of Vikram Sarabhai, the founder of India Space Program, in collaboration with ISRO. And this title was launched with the Honorable President of India in September, a moment of great, great pride for us. We also launched on other platforms like Hindi. There's a platform called Pratilipi where we have given our Hindi comics only. Some of the other initiatives, we launched the Amarchitra Katha Family Quiz, season 1, where it was fabulous. We had every morning we would launch, we would put the quiz on our app and our website, 10 a.m. sharp, and you have to answer 10 questions, and the week's winners get into a preliminary. And then we had quarterfinals, semi-finals, and then we had the finals. And it grew from nothing, because we do have a quizzing tradition in the company. Uncle Pai used to conduct a lot of quizzes to popularize the comics, but this is a digital avatar of it. And again, the numbers really surpassed our expectations. We had 25,000 unique users taking the quiz. We had 9.3 million reach for those videos, 14.8 million impressions, with just a spend of 30,000 rupees. We had a celebrity round with the actor Rana Daggubati, and with a lot of I think there was more than 1,000 questions, and it was really amazing to watch. And in 2.5 months, by the last month, if the quiz was even 2 minutes late, if we were posting it at 10:02, you would start getting messages. Why is the quiz? Where is the quiz today? Why have you not launched it yet? So that is the kind of following that we quickly got. September 17th was Uncle Pai Day, and we did a lot of different activities. That's our Founder's Day. It's his birth anniversary, and we celebrate it every year. But this year was very, very special. We did a lot of things digitally, and all of them got wonderful responses. We launched a new Amar Chitra Katha travel property with SOTC and Thomas Cook, where we have together curated something called the Great Indian Journeys. The itinerary of each of these has been designed by us. So it's a comic book which tells you the story, and then SOTC puts together the rest of the experience, whether it is eating the royal thali, or actually going and experiencing a sound and light show. That is their part. Each of these 4 books has a narrator. So in the Krishna title, Sudama is a narrator. In the for Hampi, we have Tenali Raman as the narrator. We have Chetak the horse in Rana Pratap's story, and we have Birbal in the last one. So this has been it has just been launched. It's a licensing business. It's a collaboration with them. Again, like I said, it is the way it's our thought to say, how else do people want to consume stories? Is reading the only way to consume a story? Can you do it through a live experience of travel? And India has so much to offer. We tied up with WWF, and we did a whole young naturalist workshop with our Shambhu. I told you he's become a conservationist now. We celebrated Supandi and Shambhu's birthdays. We did ACK and Friends, which is a live chat show with famous authors. We launched new podcasts in multiple languages across, and immediately as the month of launch, they both went to number 2 and 3 on the podcast. We did a lot of our Tinkle editorials, and all of that went online as well as video blogs. We launched the Tinkle game show, and we've recently also launched the National Geographic app. This is some of the initiatives of just the last 10 months. And I just like to read out what I wrote in this last slide. The vision and purpose of our founder, Mr. Anand Pai, continues to guide us. Nothing gives us more satisfaction than enriching the social fabric of India by inspiring young minds to discover more and take pride in India's glorious past and exciting future. We remain by our founder's vision as we purposefully step into a new world order, keeping our old stories alive and telling new ones, all the time staying focused on making our content relevant for the new generation of readers. So I don't know how we're doing on time, but that is the little that I had.
We're doing pretty good.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Preeti. That was really inspiring and very, very motivating to listen to you. I think something which we will all carry back very, very strongly is this entire root to roots approach that Amar Chitra Katha has taken. That was indeed something very, very heartwarming to listen to. There are lots of questions. I'd like to move on to them so that we have a more engaging discussion. But I'd like to first request Mr. Suresh Matre to say a few words and make an observation. Over to you, Mr. Matre.
So I hate to admit it that I read all this as a child, especially when Preeti has announced it's 45 years old. It's a dead giveaway of our ages, but that's okay. I think the attraction to me, and now as a grandfather with grandkids who listen to these stories, is the exposure that people like me who are convent educated and my grandkids who are even more westernized Indians, the link that we are able to set up with the Indian culture.
Yes.
And there are such wonderful stories, and each of our stories has a moral at the end.
Yes.
There's a learning in it. And it's so exciting to be able to reacquaint with this. It's just that I'm not much of a digital person, so I've got a few old tinkles which I've kept, which I read out to them. Still a pleasure to hold a
But
book
sure,
rather than.
we have a very vibrant print business as well. So you
I
can go
know,
to a bookstore or go to Amazon and buy the print.
I
We
know.
still sell about 2 million copies in print as well every
Yeah,
year. So rest
and with,
assured.
if you are reproducing National Geographic, then it's one of the best in the country, I'm sure.
That's right.
So that is still, my generation is still, it still is a pleasure to sit with grandkids in bedtime with a book rather
Of
than
course.
Kindle. But it's so wonderful, and it's so wonderful to know you have kept it relevant. You've moved into the digital era so successfully, and as you said, it is not nostalgia. You've made it contemporary. I think you deserve our full congratulations, and our uh, as a BMA, as managers, we know what challenges you must have faced as a CEO to have brought your company to this level, and particularly grown during COVID times and made best use of some of the adversities. I think is remarkable. So well
Thank
done,
you so much.
well done,
Thank you.
Preeti.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sureshji, for those observations. And
No, I just
I
wanted to
think
add a point on the making of the comics relevant for today's generation. So even our mythology, the beauty of Indian mythology is that why has it stayed alive for so many thousands of years? You know, because it has always been able to adapt to the times. It's, I think, the ultimate open source story structure, right? It allows for interpretation. So last year we released a book called Rama's Ring, which has lesser known stories from the Indian epics, right? So there's one version from the Adbhut Ramayana in the south, where the arrow that kills Ravan is actually fired by Sita and not by Ram. So we are trying to bring out all of these as well to give today's children this understanding that this is also Indian mythology. This is also a version. Both versions exist, and both versions are valid, right? It's what lesson you can take away from it. That is the point of telling the story. So it's very important to, I think, for today's generation. So the sensibility which existed in the 70s and 80s is not the sensibility today, right? For example, we cannot talk about servants and slaves. It's a different environment we live in. So while we are reprinting and republishing old titles, we are very cognizant of making small changes. I'll give you an example of Tanaji, which was reprinted last year. There was a line in the Tanaji book where the father-in-law, the grandfather is telling his son, whose son is going to get married, that you must be very proud that you have got a fair daughter-in-law. Fair, because
okay,
fairness,
fair.
fairness was equated with beauty and was a value that was sought after. Now in 2021, I do not want young girls to grow up with the notion that I need to be fair to be successful in life, right? Or to find a good husband. Fair is something that we don't want to promote that anymore. And I don't want that message to go on. So we changed it to say, you must be so proud that you've got a wonderful daughter in law. Just one word, changing the word fair to wonderful. It doesn't cost anything. We don't make a noise about it. We don't go and shout it out. But in our heart, we have a clear conscience that the message going out in the 2021 reprint of Tanaji says, wonderful daughter in law. So it is a relevant message. Today's educationist, today's teacher, today's parent reading will not have to cover up, will not have to hide from it. That is our responsibility as well. But having said that, am I going to go and change the story of Ganesh's birth? Because some parents are worried about, I don't want to expose my child to that kind of violence. No, that is the story of Ganesh's birth, right? Lord Shiva cut off the elephant's head and put it on the boy, and that's how Ganesh was born, and we all know that story. So we won't touch that. That is our culture. That is a story we know, and our job as storytellers is to tell that story. So I just wanted to bring out a few of these aspects. Let's take
Amazing
the
point.
question.
Yeah, amazing point, Preeti. In fact, my next question was related to that only.
Right.
And that it is really wonderful that the image of the servant in Supandi was gradually changed to change with the times.
That's
Or
right.
as you just said, even the entire concept of Shikari Shambhu, the Shikari is now shooting with the camera and not with the gun, so that
Yeah.
people are more aware about conservation, etc.,
Right.
etc.
Right.
Now, when you say this to us, it is so very, very easy and appreciable. How difficult was it to bring about the change? Because you're dealing with so many people who might have so many ideas with them, which have grown with them over the years. Like to
Yes.
share some perspectives.
So Supandi and Shambhu, the change that has been made is not something new. I can't take credit for it. I've only been in the company for 1.5 years. These are changes which were made almost, I think, 6 or 7 years ago. And it's been gradual, right? It's been gradual, and uh, it's been very well accepted. So that's, and I think ultimately there are, of course, we are lucky enough in the company that we still have, for example, the executive editor of Amar Chitra Katha is a lady called Ms. Reena Puri, who's been with the company for over 30 years, right? Or the group art director who still illustrates Shambhu is Mr. Savio Mascarenhas, who's been with us for 28 years. So these are industry legends who have been trained under Mr. Pai themselves directly, right? So they carry the ethos, they carry the values, they know how things, but the to credit to them, they have extremely open minds, and they have never resisted, and they understand that to keep Uncle Pai's legacy alive, we need to do this. So this is not, none of the changes have been made as a response to the market. It is a response that we feel as publishers it is necessary for us to do.
Absolutely. I think you've demonstrated that you as an organization are extremely socially responsible, because that's exactly what you have done. I think full compliments to you and your team onto that. That's
Thank you.
really nice to listen to. Another related question to all this is, consistently producing such high quality material is a challenge. And as it happens in many organizations, how do you manage to retain the talent? How do you ensure that they are able to deliver that high quality consistently, comic after comic, issue after issue, magazine after magazine? Share some of your secrets, please.
So there are no special secrets. I'll just talk about my personal style of leadership or of management is to work with a sense of trust, right? Uh, to trust in people so that they become trustworthy. That's something that I personally believe in. Creative people need the time and space and trust in their abilities. Um so that's one part. Second part is a lot of acknowledgement, a lot of appreciation. I think that always goes a very long way in giving them that boost. um, Thirdly, to make sure that our creative team is not writing or creating or drawing in a bubble. They have to be in touch with what's happening in the world. Only then can they create, right? Tinkle, for example, is grown on a foundation. It was a magazine by the children and for the children. So at least 50% of the content that comes in Tinkle actually comes from children, and then it is rewritten or adapted by us to put it together nicely as a story. So I think these are all very, very important aspects. Now, we were talking before the call, before this webinar started, Mr. Professor Mani, about are you all working from home? Are you working from office? And I said we are still working from home. And the fact is that as creative people, I don't feel the need to insist that they have to come to office to write their stories. Whether you want to write a story at 3 a.m. in the morning or 3 p.m. in the afternoon, it doesn't matter to me. As long as a good story gets written and is delivered on time, that's the only thing I should worry about. So I think we have to create that kind of work environment, an environment of trust, an environment of appreciation, of acknowledgement, and giving people the freedom and the space to create and giving them the right stimulation. I keep on telling them that I am a Vignaharta for you. If there's anything coming in your way, I already trust that you know what your job is and you are the best person to do that job. If there is some obstacle coming in your path, then it's my job as a CEO to remove that obstacle from your path and to go out and find new opportunities. I only have two jobs: to find new opportunities for the company and to remove the obstacles in your path. The rest, all of you already know what needs to be done.
I think that's an amazing sense of what is called delegation in action, because a lot of people preach delegation, but it really doesn't happen. But your comparison to Vignaharta, I guess, is very, very striking. I'd like to hand over to Indrapal Singh ji. He has a question. Indrapal ji is again a doyen from the industry, spent about 40 years with Godrej and also a past president of BMA. Indrapal ji, over to you.
Good
Yeah,
evening,
yeah,
sir.
Preeti, it was wonderful listening to your talk. And I think in your story, there is the whole lot of management wisdom is very deeply ingrained, and I think so much relevant the way you have reinvented. Publishing has been considered some sort of a waning business. Books have been considered to be a dying business, but I think the way you have adopted deserves to be a very vital case study in leading management institutions, that how an organization or a legend can be steered to become relevant once again. And I think this Vignaharta is a very superb thing in leadership, in the sense I know of a story where a CEO of a very large organization had only one question to ask his people, that, okay, how are you, instead of asking, how are you doing? He will ask that, okay, what can I do to help you do better? So I think this sort of, good way to manage a creative organization, the way you have brought forward, is wonderful. All that I wanted to know, that are we creating new heroes in our culture through Amar Chitra Katha brand? For example, the way we want a society to move, we require new heroes. We have Dr. Sarabhai, we have Vivekananda, and we have so many old heroes. But now we need a bunch of new heroes or contemporary. For example, it could be Satya Nadella or somebody else, some new scientists, and so on. So are you focusing on creating new heroes which could become the role models of the current generation as such?
So there is, first of all, Mr. Singh, it's a very big pleasure and honor to meet you. Thank you for your kind words. New heroes, there is actually a very simple rule that Mr. Pai founded when he founded Amarchitra Katha, was that we would never do the story of anybody who is still living. Right? Couple of reasons for it, because when we are doing Amarchitra Kathas, it is a biography of a person's life. So that person's life needs to be complete, right? All the lifespan, the life story has to be completed. So that's one aspect of it. Second, an Amarchitra Katha going into a child's hand, it's a very impressionable age. They are going to be deeply affected by what they read, and we want to inspire them with positive stories. Sometimes, unfortunately, what happens is that there are people who rise to the pinnacle and they fall, right? Because either they become corrupt, or some scandal happens, or something goes wrong, and there's a big fall from the graces. And that's something that we don't want to leave with children. So we continue to hold by his formula or his rule, that we will only do the life story of people who are no longer in this world. So maybe those stories, we are thinking about how different ways to tell. Maybe we can do some interviews, or maybe we can do some but as a book, we will continue to look at it from a very strict viewpoint.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
You mentioned there are lots of special issues that you all have come out with.
Right.
One of our readers has this suggestion that these special issues which concern society at large,
Right.
may it be Swachha Bharat, may it be cleanliness, may it be
Yeah.
self-discipline, and all these issues,
Right.
the request is please put them in the public domain also, so that more and more people can have access to it.
Right.
I think that's a very nice thought. I thought it would
Thank
be
you. In
worthwhile
fact, we
to
are
share
doing
it with
that
you.
now. In the last 1.5 years, whatever new contracts we are signing, whether it's the government or the Navy, even the Vikram Sarabhai comic, we are insisting that we should also be allowed to put that comic out in the public domain and sell that comic. It should not just be given to that organization. So, for example, the Navy comics are available already. You can read them on the app, and they will be soon printed. Vikram Sarabhai is available in a print version, as well as, although it was in collaboration with ISRO, it is available for public access as well.
Wonderful. That's nice to hear. A lot of readers, people who are readers of your comics, of course, and now listeners here today, a question in the mind is, today's generation, the reading habit seems to be dying to a great extent. Having said that, we are also happy to hear from you that still a lot of people prefer to pick up that comic or that magazine instead of going on to that app or social media, which you have anyway tried to balance.
Right.
Could you just share some perspectives on what is the current reality as far as Amar Chitra Katha Tinkle Nat Geo goes, just to get a flavor of the reading habits of Indian people today, based on your experiences?
So I think it is a one of the best myths in the market or in society today is that today's children don't like to read. They're only playing video games and they are not reading. Nothing could be further from the truth. And I'll give you a few solid reasons why. Um, 40, 50 years ago, India was not a vibrant economy the way we are now. Parents did not have that kind of disposable income. There were no options to buy books. Professor Mani, you might remember when I was a kid, all we had was Amar Chitra Katha Tinkle, and we had those Soviet Union books which used to come.
Correct.
We had a Chanda Mama, we had a Target. There was literally, you can count them on your fingers, right? There was 8 or 10 options for reading material outside of your school syllabus. Today, there are about 30 to 35 homegrown Indian publishers of only children's books. They're creating Indian content for children. So I'm not going to try to convince anyone, because the very fact that 35 Indian children's publishers are thriving and growing in the market shows that there is a readership. Because if there was no children reading, these guys would not survive, right? So not only are they surviving, but the Indian children's publishing industry is growing by leaps and bounds. Parents are realizing the value of reading, and they finally have a disposable income to be able to, if they're spending 200 rupees on a Domino pizza, they're also spending 200 rupees on a book for their child.
Absolutely.
Secondly, teachers, don't forget the role of educationists. Teachers and principals and schools are really championing the cause of reading. You will not believe there are independent schools like conducting entire literature festivals, right? In just a single school conducting a literature festival, inviting authors to come and speak to their children. And not just 1 or 2 schools, there are multiple schools. And you know how it is in schools, it's very competitive. One school organizes something, the next school wants to copy that school. So this is another huge, it's mushrooming. The literature festival, Children's Lit Fest circuit is mushrooming as well. So it is a very vibrant space. It's growing very fast. On the National Geographic side, this is a difficulty here because travel is affected. National Geographic Traveler, but still we have managed to stay alive. We've done very interesting content during the pandemic about places which are safe to travel or travel after COVID, or talking about staycations and visiting your own city again and discovering hidden gems. So the reading habit is, and human beings love stories, so it's really naive of us to think that we're going to stop reading stories. Human beings, we live on stories, and we'll continue to read. And like I said, there are multiple ways to consume that story now. So maybe the print as a channel. So if I look at our own business today, whereas earlier the print channel would be maybe 80% of our revenues would come from the print business, today it is 50%. But our overall revenue also has grown, right? So it's a 50-50 between leverage and between print, but the overall pie itself is growing.
That's good to hear. And I guess that balance is helping people choose which way they would like to read or consume your stories, as you rightly mentioned. That absolutely makes sense. Another question that is here is from one of my colleagues on the executive committee, Jagmohan Rishi. Jagmohan, I will unmute you. You can go ahead and ask your question. Go ahead.
Hello, sir. Hello, ma'am.
Hello, sir.
Thanks for lovely session.
Thank you.
I joined a little late, but the comics have been favorite of every child, and I think the child in every human being should be alive always.
Absolutely.
So that's what I believe. And I'm sorry, I'm driving. I'm just going to stop and ask the question here.
Yes, sir. Please. I was about to say that. Please be safe.
My question was that as you were saying that the platforms have changed, and today the platform is 50 in the hard copy and 50 on the television side. Are we also doing something to on the digitized version of platforms? For example, AR and VR, which can engage an adult population also for that, wherein you can engage large number. Of course, the kids are also moving towards a digitized version with the games. So are we also planning to come out with those things kind of thing?
So yes, we do have some games. We have both mobile games as well as physical board games in the pipeline. That's something we are planning. AR and VR, we have done some experiments. Unfortunately or fortunately, they do require a lot of investments at this point of time. And given the state of the economy and the state of the market right now, there is definitely a cash flow crunch. So if I have 5 lakhs available to me, my question is always that should I use that to print something where there is an existing order from a retailer, right? Or should I invest it in something new? Or should I enhance the experience on my existing app? So when there is an existing demand for something in a business environment, you'll agree that always wins, right?
Yeah,
But we do have some exciting plans, and please keep a lookout. We are launching a new app for younger children, the ACK Junior app, which is going to be launched around summer, around April or May. We are looking at mobile games as well. So all those things are in the pipeline. The ACK quiz is going to be much bigger. Those are all our plans. But at the foundation of it all is telling stories. That's what it is.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
And I must take the opportunity to share with all of us here. Preeti says that since she has come on the festive occasion of Makar Sankrant Pongal, which we've just celebrated across the country between yesterday and today, from the entire team at Amar Chitra Katha, they wish to offer a small gift to everybody who is present here in this session. And that is, I'm going to post in the chat box a link for using the app for 1 month on a complimentary basis for Amar Chitra Katha, for Tinkle, and for National Geographic. And I can see a lot of smiles already coming in the faces of our viewers. So thank you, Preeti, for that lovely gesture. We sincerely
Absolutely a
appreciate
pleasure.
this.
Please
And
do make the most of it.
Absolutely. And I sincerely hope that you start multiplying in multiples of lakhs, not in 1 lakh or 10
Thank you
lakhs
so
in
much.
what you make. Because for me, nostalgia has always been that in our days, we had to borrow Amar Chitra Katha because everybody could not afford to have their own copies.
Yes.
And I still remember there were days we used to collect money. 5 of us used to share and together buy the book. And
Wow.
then we used to draw chits as to who would read the book first, second, third, fourth, fifth. So that is how one has grown with Amar Chitra Katha, if one might say so, to the scenario that you have shared with us today.
So, Professor Mani, I
ladies and gentlemen,
keep on meeting people who say, "Oh, I have a whole stack of Amarchitra Kathas which we have had a hardbound. We've bound them together, and we have these 4. And I'm passing them on to my children, and I'm passing them to my grandchildren." And my humble request is, keep your copies with yourself and buy new copies for your children and grandchildren because they're updated, they're new, and your kids deserve their own collections.
Absolutely. In fact, that example you gave about that fair daughter-in-law or fair daughter was so important in today's context because the social values are changing and comics make a fantastic impression in the minds of the children. So that's a very, very valid point. I'm now handing over to another senior colleague of mine, Mr. Ernest Fernandez. He's been, again, an industry leader with the Tata Group for a very long time and a marketing specialist himself. Mr. Fernandez has been our past president too. Over to you, sir.
Preeti, very fascinating.
Good evening, sir. Lovely to meet you. In fact, we've done a comic recently on the 150 years of the Tata Group.
Tata.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, we've just completed that. Yes.
Oh, how fascinating. Yeah. Preeti, I was just wondering that when we describe Amar Chitra Katha as a comic, I suppose this word comic book originated when these were funny and these were fictional. Yes. But now the whole concept has changed.
Right.
In the sense that you're having very serious themes which are put across very interestingly. But when you say you're giving a gift of a comic book, it has its limitations.
That's true.
Would you agree with that?
I do agree, absolutely. That word comic itself makes it sound frivolous almost, right? Whereas the new terminology is graphic novels. But the point is that when you say graphic novel, it somehow implies something which is meant for an adult, like an adult genre, which might have violence and which might have those themes. So unfortunately, that word comic book is easily understood and we are stuck with it. But you're so right, sir. And there should be a new term that, we should be able to coin and change the perception.
Yeah, but you've explained it very well. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Mr. CA Vinay Gupta, would you like to ask ask your question. I am unmuting you. Please go ahead. Request, please unmute and then you can go ahead.
Okay, can you hear?
Yes,
I
please.
can hear, yes.
Okay, Preeti, it was nice listening to me. I was also avid reader of Amar Chitra Katha, and I have met Mr. Anand Uncle Pai also in Don
Wow.
Bosco 1980, I believe.
How lovely.
So I wanted to know whether you are such a strong medium, whether some kind of social issues also can be taken up in a story form on the nature conservation, reducing pollution, sound, and also cleanliness, etc., in some form or the other as a social objective. You know.
Yeah, so I think I shared some of the work we're doing, whether it's Swachh Bharat or Shambhu's, efforts for conservation and, trying to look at environment issues with World Wildlife Federation. Also, we are working with them. So we are continuously trying to look at social impact and how we can make a difference. That remains one of our guiding principles.
It was so nice, and feel free for any type of social contribution in any form. I read a lot. In fact, I was a member of R.A. Podar College, where they used to charge only 1 rupee as a momentum to the Professor U. Bhatt Library. So from there, I used to get these books, and I was a reader.
How lovely.
I remember very well. So I can contribute back to the society.
Right.
In any form whatsoever.
Thank you.
I remember some name like Vedu Thampi and all in 1980, some South Indian great hero.
Yeah. That's right.
So my memory is so strong. Yes, Vedu
Wow.
Thampi, this comic.
That's
so it's very nice. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vinay. Thank you. Preeti, some of our participants are so enthusiastic that they're taking the liberty to perhaps suggest what kind of new titles they would like to read from Amar Chitra Katha.
I have my my notepad and my pen ready, so I'll take down your suggestions.
I thought it was worthwhile considering their enthusiasm. Your point was well noted that Amarchitra Katha as a policy would not like to make people's biographies unless they have completed their lifespan and so on. That is understandable. But it would be great for the children if we could bring in Amarchitra Katha kind of books on, let's say, the surgical strike, or let us say on such issues where it is affecting the children, but they don't get the complete information.
Right.
Either the information they have is something they don't understand,
Correct.
or the parent says, "Oh, you're too young to know all this. Tujhe baad mein pata chalega," kind of a thing.
So,
unfortunately, there is a political dimension.
Correct. So the Navy, I told you, we're doing 3 books. We are doing 3 books for the Indian Navy. So the first book, 2 books are about the history of the Navy. The third book, in fact, is about heroic naval operations. And that really talks about the story of the operations. It's not about a particular hero. Because in the Navy, the concept is the ship, right? It is a captain, but it's a team effort always. The operation is the ship's effort. So some of the heroic operations, including the wars, including relief operations, tsunami relief, all of those are captured in that book.
Wonderful. So that was one. And of course, some of the Nobel Prize winners from India, some of them, of course, are still living and contributing, but the others, there could be a focus there. Of course, you've rightly said that areas like cleanliness, Swachh Bharat, conservation, afforestation, all these seem to be great areas, because I think I agree with a larger group which says that comics make a very great impression in the minds of the children. And though Mr. Fernandez rightly pointed out that the word comic seems very comical.
Yeah, and frivolous. Almost frivolous. Yes.
The kind of learning that comes out of it is absolutely mind-blowing. And you'll be amused if I also tell you that in my house, comics are seen as a de-stressor before going to write exams. This is something we institutionalized in our house over the last 20 years. A lot of people say when I want to de-stress, I watch a cartoon. I say, don't, it might distract, read a comic. And that is how the entire approach of how comics could be something which could be a de-stressor is something many people have tried out and used. So I'm very happy to share that one bit further with you. You had something to say, please go ahead.
No, it's fine. I think we covered that.
All right. The other angle that is really one is looking at is, have you managed to get Amar Chitra Katha Tinkle comics into libraries in schools?
Oh,
because that could be one solid way of doing it.
So libraries, there is not a single library. I can't say not a single, but I would say majority of schools in India would have the entire ACK collection. Just like a bookstore in India could not survive without having Amar Chitra Katha as part of their collection. So that is definitely there. But yes, what we are seeing as a challenge is to push our new content, the new stories. Which I told you about Drama's Ring. We did Women Pathbreakers of India. Being a woman myself, I'm very passionate about telling little girls about the kind of women who have helped shape the country. The first woman botanist of India, the first woman meteorologist of India, the woman who championed for child against child marriage or for the Age of Consent Act. All these kind of women who braved so many challenges to create the world that we enjoy today. So these are the new stories is what we have to work extra hard to push, because that is what sometimes people want to hold on to their old Amarchitra Kathas and not see the new work that we are doing. So my humble request to all of you who are here today is, please do check out our new titles. Give those new titles. You'll be amazed at the kind of art, the kind of, see, in those days, Professor Mani, in the 70s and 80s, there was no digital, there was no Photoshop. The artist had a 24 color watercolor palette and they used to paint by hand. Today we have Photoshop with an amazing variety of textures and brushes and shading. The art these days in our new comics is stunning. It is beautiful. It is very contemporary. It is gorgeous, and I want all of you to go and check those out.
Absolutely. In fact, there's another interesting question. If you can tell us, how long does it take to produce an Amarchitra Katha or a Tinkle, and what would be the process in as simple a manner? If you could share it, it would be very interesting for the participants.
Okay. So an Amarchitra Katha, because a Tinkle is a lot faster. We do a Tinkle every month, right? So it's a monthly magazine. Tinkle is faster. Simple reason is Tinkle is fiction, right? It's all fiction. They're stories that we make up. So it's a lot faster, and we typically work 3 months in advance. So currently we are in January. The team is working on the issues which will come out in April. So we have a 3-month advance plan that starts. For Amarchitra Katha, the process is about 18 months. It's 18 months to 24 months for a single comic book, right? Because the reason we enjoy this reputation and all this love and loyalty, the foundation of that is authenticity, right? Authenticity, credibility. That's why parents and teachers trust us. So we don't cut any corners with the research and the fact-checking process. That's very, very important. That's a cornerstone of what we do. So it all starts with once we have chosen the topic, we get into the research aspect, and that takes a fair amount of time. Once the research is done, then a basic story line is drawn up, which is in prose form. Once we all agree on that, the next step is to convert that into a script. So it's almost like making a movie, right? There's dialogues which have to be written, and in the comic book, there's speech bubbles. So the amount of space available is very limited. So it can't be very long. It's 5, 6, 10 words at the most. So the scripting is done. So you have what needs to be said, that is said in the next column, converts that into the script. And next to that, there is a column which gives a visualization brief to the artist, that for this panel, this is what the characters will be saying, and this is what the art needs to depict. So that entire scripting along with the visualization is done. Once that is done, it then goes into the sketching phase. The black and white sketching, the line drawings are done. That is put in, and then if that is approved, a lot of changes happen at this stage because something doesn't look good, something is not right, something is removed, something is added. Once that is done, then the coloring is done, right? And then once the coloring is done, finally the lettering is done. So the letters are put in, the dialogues are actually put in. And once, the pictures and the text, they are best friends. They go hand in hand. They support and complement each other. So once the art is in, you realize a lot of what you want to communicate. For example, he looked shocked. You don't need to write he looked shocked because the character's expression should show the shock, right? So again, editing happens even at that stage to make it really crisp and short. And then finally, the whole thing is, once again, it's the proofreading is done, another round of editing is done. It's a very time-consuming, tedious process. So 18 to 24 months is what it takes. When we do something like a Shiv Puran, which is such a mammoth project, it might take 3 to 4 years to put that together. Because multiple artists, multiple script writers are all collaborating on it together. I hope that
Amazing.
explains the
So
process.
I guess it really, yes, absolutely. And it also confirms that writing a comic is a very serious business in that sense, because
It's far
as you
also,
rightly said,
this is my first exposure to comic books. I come from the world of publishing, but I always published books. And that is far easier than comics. Comics, I realize, has 3 additional layers which don't exist when you're publishing novels.
and especially when you're publishing ancient Indian literature and
Right.
scriptures,
Right.
The credibility plays a very, very important role,
Even
as you rightly explained.
even the translation is so much more difficult because I have to translate that into, say, a Hindi or a Marathi. I have to capture the essence. That is anyway translation or translator's job. But here it has to again fit in that same speech bubble. So if I'm saying it in 6 words in English, it has to be said in 6 words in Hindi as well. You can't make it 10 because the amount of space available is only that much. So it's really very, and you know, Amar Chitra Katha, the beauty is that our style is very simple. Our language is very simple. It's very, it's not affected. We don't try to, you know, complicate things. It's simple. It's light. The story has to move fast. The pace has to be good. We always throw in 2 or 3 difficult words because we believe that if a child is reading it, we should give his vocabulary 2 or 3 challenging words with every comic. So that effort is also there, but overall, it has to be simple, it has to be fun, it has to be light.
Absolutely. Trust me, Preeti, you have so many fans in this audience that they continue to give you some more new ideas because they're so inspired by your comics.
I am writing away.
A series on musicians of India, artists of India, sportsmen of India. I think this is something, all 3 of them look to be great ideas.
Absolutely.
Musicians, artists, and of course, sportsmen of India.
So the other day, in fact, we were brainstorming in the company, and one idea which came up was, let's do a collection of the most seminal and famous cricket matches which India has won. You know, let's take the top 6 cricket. And so it's not the story of a particular sports person. It's the story of that match. What happened in that match? And cricket lovers would love that, right? Like Prudential Cup or World Cup or match mein hua kya, right? What was it? And to try to convert that into 6, a collection of 6 stories or 3 stories. So we are experimenting with a lot of these, thinking about a lot of these ideas.
Thank you so much, Preeti. I had promised you that we would stick to our punctuality reputation. We're coming to the pause of a lovely learning session. We refuse to use the word close of a session because we believe learning goes on forever. And thanks to your courtesy, generosity, and good nature, having given us this wonderful opportunity to experience all the 3 of your wonderful products through the app for a month. I hope all of you have taken note of those links, because if you didn't take it today, I will charge you if you want it later. But today it is complimentary. So I hope you picked it up from the chat box. On that note, I'd like to request my colleague from the Executive Committee, Chintan Oza, to please do a small wrap up and propose the vote of thanks on all our behalf to Preeti.
Just before you start, Mr. Oza, one last point. When you use that link, it'll automatically open up the app for you. It'll ask you for your email address. Then it'll open up the app. You will have to sign in again. A lot of people forget to sign in and then they say the link is not working. So I just want to tell everyone that just like in your Netflix or wherever else, you have to sign in once you open the app, put in the email address and sign in and it will work just fine. Thank you.
Noted.
Yes. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Mani sir. Thank you, Preeti ji. This was indeed one more session interaction like any other story of Tinkle or Amar Chitra Katha.
Oh, that's a big compliment. Thank you.
So, I mean, thank you so much for narrating entire journey, sharing insights. Indeed, we are. There are certain statistics or highlights of the session which I really gave us more insights. Like, I mean, almost half of the content in Tinkle comes from kids only, and you polish it further and then make it more presentable. So that gives a vision that, okay, fine, it is there for the children, and then it would maintain the momentum of the future generations and their engagement as well. Other thing I would like to say is definitely Amar Chitra Katha is something, I mean, in earlier times, in probably when people used to get married, they were gifted Ramayans and Mahabharat and all. And then afterwards, when they become uncle and aunt, they would start giving these Amar Chitra Kathas. So this is a kind of, I mean, essential collection of books in Indian homes. So definitely messages and stories combined together, and then again it is noteworthy that you guys are also present in audio visual mediums and various channels available to our users. So that is something, the great digital transformation you are undertaking. So our compliments to you for the same. And last but not the least, I mean, a lady leading this entire startup to a next level. So you yourself is indeed an inspiring leader, ma'am. So thank you so much, and we appreciate your time. And thanks everyone for joining us. Have a great evening ahead. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And before we sign off, our customary group photograph, can I request everyone to put on your videos so that we cherish this lovely evening that we spent in the company of someone who represents India's biggest leader in the area of storytelling, if that's the right word to use, because I think all of us will now hesitate to use the word comics. Let's say the greatest storytelling organization of India, Amar Chitra Katha Tinkle, and of course, National Geographic. All videos on, please. May I request Lakshmi, Oindrila, Supriya, they are the efficient digital photographers of the BMA team. Well, I always call them that. They are the efficient back office staff of the BMA team who do a wonderful job in putting up this entire event together. Over to you, girls, for capturing this moment for us. And while we listen into them, I hope you've noted down the link which Preeti had so graciously shared. And may I remind you, next Wednesday, we have a very interesting session by a Padma Shri awardee, Dr. Sudha Raghunathan, who is an eminent musician. But she's not coming for a music concert. She's coming to inspire us on yet another aspect of Indian tradition and ethos. That is the Guru Sishya Parampara. And next Friday, we have a very interesting innovation conclave where we have two speakers, one from IIM Calcutta, Professor Ranjan Das, and one from the University of San Diego, Rangapriya Kannan, who was recently ranked as among the top 50 professors of business management in the world. They are going to do a jugalbandi for us on innovation, national and international perspective. So stay tuned to our programs. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great evening and let the festive season continue to bring joy and cheer like Preeti did this evening for us. Thank you once again, Preeti, and we look forward to more and more interactions with all of us. Good evening. Namaskar.
Namaskar.
Good evening. Thank you so much.